Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another whiskey review. Today we are going to be talking about a new release. This only cost me $30, so this was a complete leap of faith on my part. But there's another reason I bought this too, at least where I am in Northern Kentucky. The shelves of bourbon are changing, the labels are changing, and as you get into the details, there is more and more Kentucky sourced bourbon appearing on the shelves. And that is part of the inspiration of buying this one and talking about it as well. So if you're interested in a new budget pour, listen to this one, and then we'll talk about the whiskey industry as well as we go through this. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. I'm going to describe this one a little bit before I show the label, but this price tag is $30. So listen to this, because there's a lot of stuff on this label. They give you a whole lot of transparency, though they don't tell you the age. We'll get into that too. But the mash bill on this is 70% corn, 21% winter rye, 9% malted 2 and 6 month barley. So it also says finished in sherry cask staves. So what we're looking at here is a high rye Kentucky bourbon finished in sherry cask staves and only costing $30. So here's the label. So what we got here, it's a brand called Noteworthy. And as I was describing before, there is like all this transparency on the label. I'll get into this in just a moment. The most important thing that they do say, though, is they say it pretty clear. 10 Distillery Road, Owensburg, Kentucky is where this is located. And then at the bottom, DSP Kentucky 10. Well, what does that tell us? That tells us that this is sourced Green River. So this is sourced Green River, maybe contract distilled. You know, I don't know quite the situation, but the fact that they're so transparent about the source without saying the source is interesting. Maybe contract distilled, because I don't think the base Green River has that 21% winter rye, but maybe I'm wrong there. Let me know in the comments what you think of that mash bill. But it does say other things. The barrel is new white oak. The mash temperature was 212. The type of still was a combination of a column still and a copper doubler. Char number 4. The water utilized was pure Kentucky limestone water, and it was non-chill filtered. So they give you all that and the mash bill all on the label, and they finish it in sherry cask staves. Now, one thing I will say, you know, it's interesting when you hear sherry cask staves, because you're not expecting then it to be like fully sherry finished or to get that whole profile, right? Like they probably chopped up that barrel and, you know, threw them in there, kind of like what Makers does. That's what I hear when I hear that. But that is this right here. The other reason I wanted to get into it, $30, great experiment. And on my shelves in Northern Kentucky, I am seeing more and more Kentucky sourced products from Green River and from Bardstown Bourbon Company. It seems to be taking over for the MGP, less and less new brands, say, distilled in Indiana. I think it's totally interesting. If you go back to one of our very first lives, we were talking about this in the first place. Like Bardstown was just set to take over for MGP, get into the contract distilling, be the main source of people that are interested in being NDPs. And now we see it actually happening on the store shelves, at least for me in Northern Kentucky. And then, of course, Bardstown also bought Green River. And when they bought Green River, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, they bought Green River because I just read an article about Green River getting into the contract distilling game, and Bardstown's trying to take that over. So it's all speculation on my part, but I think that was the the business side of it. And of course, Green River makes some really good whiskey as well. Well, let's get into this one here. Thanks for hanging around, everybody, for that big intro. But this is Noteworthy Bourbon. As I said, $30. I got this from Party Source in Northern Kentucky. Really interested to know if you're seeing this in your area. You may not have even noticed it before, but now that I'm putting this label in your head, you'll let me know if you see it on the shelves. It's 90 proof, and the only thing that they don't disclose on this label is the age. Though sampling it 4 years, 5 years, maybe a blend of 4 or 5 years, something like that would be my pure speculation. So let's get into the review itself. I'll try to go through this a little quickly since I was a little heavy-winded in the intro here. But we'll go through the nose, the palate, and the finish, and then we'll go to the final scores, and you can see where this new budget bourbon is scoring in our scoring system. Cheers, everybody. Man. You know, the nose gets better if you let this thing sit out for a little bit, so kind of keep that in mind. The main characteristics, though, that are going to come through the nose is a distinct nuttiness, cherry, some wood, some woodiness to it. Now, not like an oak, but more like a fresh cedar, fresh oak kind of a sensation. And you get like a little hint of the sherry, but off the nose, I don't think I could call that this was finished at all. You know, I think that's maybe as a part of my mind playing tricks on me when I think I'm picking up the sherry. You never know that. And then the fruits on it, you know, they come across a little artificial. That cherry and the sherry kind of combined into like a fruit Jolly Rancher kind of sensation. So fruit Jolly Rancher, nuttiness, woodiness. I think that sums it up. On the nose, you know, I teetered on this one. I ended up giving it a sideways. You know, I think the flavors are fine. Doesn't really have complexity. So that's what kind of brought it to like a midpoint there. But really do enjoy the nose for what it is. And something that's 90 proof, $30. I don't know if I could expect too much more. Let's get into the palate. The palate is the mouthfeel first. It does feel a little watery. It feels watered down at 90%. Initially, it doesn't give a whole lot of flavors. Essentially, there is a little bit of upfront sweetness and spiciness. You know, those fruits do come through when I'm talking about the sweetness. So combination of cherries and berries, but very, very muted. By the time you get to mid-palate, though, that nuttiness from the nose really does reemerge. Cherry blasts through a little harder. That berries is there, too. There's some cream with them, and you get a little bit of that woodiness. Overall, when it came to the palate, gave this one sideways thumb as well. You know, mainly just because there is a lack of complexity in this pour, and the mouthfeel just does have that more watered down feeling than I like to experience typically. But with that said, let's now get into the finish. Cheers, everybody. See, for me, everything does come together at the finish. It's all those same flavors, the nuttiness, the woodiness, the cherry, but the vanillas really do escalate. And what I end up getting on the back end is almost a hint of chocolate and berries. I'd essentially attribute that to the sherry really showing up more so on the finish. But once again, I don't think I would call this finished if I had it blind. But I really do enjoy the finish and where this thing concludes. So that I did give a thumbs up. So cheers, everybody. One more sip. Let's see if I find anything else. Now, I think that's it. And one thing that is starting to stick out in my Rolodex of flavors is the cherry note on Green River, coming across that more and more. It's still a little different than Buffalo Trace's cherry note, but it's going to be interesting to compare those two in the future. So when it comes to the scores here, flavor gave it a 72.5, experience gave it a 72, and then value gave it all the points. 100 out of 100 is $30. You really can't ask much more for something than this, especially being something that is sherry finished. For some people that maybe only go into bourbons that are $20 to $30 or less, this might be the first sherry finished thing that they try then. I really couldn't think of an alternative on the shelf that was this cheap and had any sherry influence at all. But in general, there are a whole lot of metrics behind the scenes here, and everything kind of mostly teetered out between sevens, mostly sevens, maybe an 8 here or there, and that's how you end up with the scores. So then overall, final score of a 75, very respectable score for something that is only $30. In terms of ranking, it is 28 out of 34 bottles reviewed this year, though you always got to keep that price in mind. And all time, 144 out of 183. So still a standout whiskey for me. This could be a whiskey that you even like start your night on, or you want during a hot summer day, maybe, if you're drinking whiskey like me on hot summer days. But that runs through the noteworthy. Once again, maybe something to check out. A gamble for $30, and it gets to know the Green River profile a bit more if you're looking to figure out what Green River is doing and how people are going to be using the Green River distillate to help themselves stand out, because just like we saw with MGP, more and more brands will probably try to differentiate themselves by finishing these things in various ways. But the price point for Green River is much lower based on their core product than how MGP kind of came into this. That's kind of the interesting part. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. If you've had this, let me know in the comments. If you've seen it in your area, let us know as well, so everyone else in the community knows where to find it too if they are interested. We'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.